Nothing to talk about. In this letter's essence, hear the plea to normalize discussions, let's break free. Yet the show on body positivity skirted the point, missed its saliency. Curated by one with no first-hand view, a blind guide to Van Gogh, a deaf to jazz's brew. Nothing to talk about, but it matters still. Describing nudity, discussions uphill. Now let's ground ourselves in adaptations hold, innate responses, often left untold. Cold water swimmers, their response refined, recognition of faces, dopamines find. Culture and religion, they shape the way, cold water baptism, a transcendent sway. But back to body recognition we find fashion and modesty blocking our mind. On a nude beach, the perseveration fades. In just 10 minutes, perception upgrades. The loss of constraint, unsettling at first, but habituation frees us from its worst. So let's discuss perception, not just rebellion, embracing the freedom, our empathetic million. Love like this topic is hard to convey. A human experience inborn, it will stay. Now the choice is ours. The time is nigh to break free, to let ourselves fly. The detrusions imagined, they hold no weight. External control, it's time to abate. Manipulation, control, a story untold, contributing to problems, we need to be bold. So here's our story, the journey we're on. Let's unbind ourselves and in unity, be strong.